This is Fight Fans Radio.
Hello, everybody. Another edition of Untethered MMA on Fight Fans Radio. It is January 24th, 2013. If you want to call into the show, you can dial in at 410-988-6525, and you can reach us on Twitter. You can reach me at It's Mike Fagan. You can reach Derek at FightLikerSebo, and you can reach Matt Roth.
Whoa, don't sell his Twitter account. He's not here. You only get the cred of our massive distribution across the airwave if you're fucking here, Mr. Roth.
If you want to tweet at Matt Roth 512 to harass why he's not on the show, you're more than welcome to.
That's fine. That's fair.
Derek, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm alive. New semester of college. I built my computer last week, and god damn it, it's just gorgeous. I'm mad at myself for being as patient as I was because I've been playing games the last couple of years in a way that they were not intended to be played, and just kind of been jamming out on that. How about yourself?
I've been doing well. I was just handed a package that was apparently delivered 2 days ago. Was it on the porch? Huh, all right.
You're just leaving shit on your porch for 2 days? You must live in a nice neighborhood.
No. I went out there. The thing was it said it was delivered on Tuesday, and it wasn't there. And I looked today, and it wasn't there either. So I'm wondering if someone, between when I looked for it a few hours ago and now,
maybe they're just fucking lying to you. UPS never delivers shit on time, and they just count on nobody to call them on their shit.
What was weird, it was a UPS package that they handed off to the Postal Service. I don't know.
Tag team.
I don't know. Yeah, apparently. I don't know what that was all about. But it's here now, so that's good. What is it? It's actually a couple of adult toys for my girlfriend.
Hey! Damn, you must like her.
I do.
If you want to bring toys, that's fine, but I'm not going to buy it for you. That's just silly. I have fingers and a tongue and a dick. Like, I'm not going to buy you things. That's cool.
Oh, Derek. You romantic.
Yeah, this is single and ready to mingle, ladies. Woo! Go ahead.
I want to go back to your computer. It's been a few years since I built my machine. It was about 5 years ago, and I actually don't have it anymore.
Do you sell it?
No, the monitors I had for it burnt out, and then I had a laptop, and I just and the hard drive crashed, so I sort of just gave up using it. But did you have that moment of panic when you first turned it on? Of like, is this shit gonna work?
No, first time I tried to turn it on, it didn't fucking turn on. So I was about ready to throw my arms up in the air. I'd done all the wiring, all the components, and the first thing that happened to me was I freaked out, and I was like, well, I bet what I did was I put the fucking processor in wrong, which is like a $500 mistake. So I tried to pop off my cooler fan that came with the CPU, and it's stuck in there for good unless I do something crazy to it. So I just had faith in the processor, and I read up on they have these troubleshooting steps where they're like, do these 15 things before you even fucking call us and ask us what's going on. And like number 13 on the list was you can put your RAM in 1 and 3 or 2 and 4 as far as your slots go. But if you have the i7 chip, it's a picky bastard and won't let you do it in 1 and 3. You got to do it in 2 and 4. I did that. It started up perfectly.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, it took about 4.5 hours for the total build just because I really wanted to take my time with everything and the cable management. 660 Ti, 3 gig graphics card was the most expensive part of the build, and holy shit. I've been playing Skyrim on a fucking laptop with integrated graphics at, 1024 by 768 at about 20 frames a second, and now it's crazy.
Yeah,
I'm very happy with it. And the cool thing is now, like, I'm excited now, later in the year or next year, I want to build a home theater PC that I just have all my movies, my TV shows too. I can torrent directly to it and just have it hooked up to my TV, have it small, out of the way, little Blu-ray player in it. And now in the future, if for like gifts and for, friends and shit like that, if they're looking to buy a computer, say, fuck that, buy the parts, give me $50, I'll do it. Because I probably say, I'm looking online to get a comparable computer. I probably saved about $700 in labor.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
If you have any sort of ability to put stuff together, it's always the correct decision.
And it's not the hardest thing in the world. Like, anybody out there who's scared, I'm not a good arts and crafts guy. I like in home ec, metal shop, I always sucked a bag of shit. I wasn't great with Legos as a kid, but if you were good with Legos, you can put a computer together.
That's true. And if you can follow directions. I mean, that's the other thing. As long as
that
you can follow
motherboard, like second page of the manual, like I just kind of glued it to my forehead for about 4 hours.
Maybe that's why you put the RAM in the wrong slot.
Nah, the RAM was in the right slot. It's just the i7, it's like more power hungry, so you can't have it in the slot that's right next to the CPU holding. I did it right. It's just with the chip. Asshole.
Let's get into the MMA talk. We'll start with the UFC show on Saturday. Bisping and Belfort. Not how I think we all go with Bisping last week? Did we all pick Bisping?
Yeah, yeah, and god damn it, because I've been picking against Michael Bisping, against powerful punchers and people I thought could knock him out, and I've been wrong, like with the Rivera fight and a couple of others. And this one, I fucking could have nailed it, and I pussed out because I thought he'd go out there and try to wrestle him. I didn't think he'd go out and stand and box with him for 4 minutes, let alone, I didn't think he'd do it for 30 seconds, let alone 4 minutes. I thought it was going to be a ground and pound. It was going to be a Chael Sonnen type of game plan, and it was not.
Yeah, and I mean, Vitor looked good. He was patient. He didn't. We only went 5.5 minutes, but he didn't, or 6.5 minutes, but he didn't gas out or anything. I think they're talking about Vitor. Who did I see? Vitor and. Did you see this, Derek? Who they were trying to get Vitor to fight?
No, I haven't. I don't even know what weight class it would be at because he seems to have an interest in going back to light heavyweight. So the fact that he can bounce between those two, they're
trying to put together Vitor and Luke Rockhold.
That would be fun, especially if Luke Rockhold can stay healthy. That's an excellent test for Rockhold. And clearly, if he beats Belfort, they'll probably just give him a title shot. They just want him to have a fight in between, which is fine. But I'll tell you what, at 205, I know that Gustafsson is booked, and I know that there are some other guys, but I'm down to see Vitor at either weight class now. He's a hell of a gatekeeper, like an elite-level gatekeeper. And
what did you think of his post-fight interview calling out John Jones?
I thought it was a little goofy. I don't think it's going to happen, but I want to see more fighters doing it. I think that every fighter for their post-fight should have something they want to say that's related to what they're going to do in the future. You thank your coaches, you thank your sponsors, pay tribute to whatever you want to do, any kind of thing that's going on in your life. But at the end, when they say, what's next for you, have an answer. And it doesn't have to be either this or I'm gone or this and fuck the guy who I'm talking shit on right now, i.e. Chael Sonnen in this instance. But have a plan so that people can at least say this is what he wants to do, because that's an added storyline to whatever it is you do next, whether it is that or it's something else.
And speaking of storylines, the biggest one going in was if Bisping won, he was going to get a title shot against Anderson Silva. And, the story with him had been that he'd been so close to title shots in the past. There's probably been a couple times we can point to in particular that he probably had a title shot lined up if he won a fight that he didn't. Now this is probably the last chance that he had. So where do you see Michael Bisping going on from here?
Well, he's not old. He's not. This isn't one of those where you just think that his skills and his physicality are going to begin to deteriorate in the near future. He may not be at his physical peak, but he's probably within it. So it's not a matter of him falling apart. I think his game plan sucked. I think he needs. To stop training in Britain. I think that with his current camp, he's gone about as far as he can go. elevated his striking and his wrestling and his ground and pound and even his submission defense to a level. But to take that next level where you have a game plan that's tailored for an opponent and you stick to it, and it's a game plan that's actually smart. Because if you look at his last two fights, he tried to wrestle, or his last two losses, he tried to wrestle the shit out of a wrestler, Chael Sonnen, which almost worked because he's such a good wrestler. And then he tried to box and strike with Vitor Belfort. It's poor. There's an inconsistency in the intelligence of the game plan that I don't like to see. I don't think he's shot. I don't think he's done. He's going to have a job with the UFC forever because he's been there forever. He's still England's biggest MMA star. But I think that he needs new surroundings and a new kind of hierarchy overseeing his training if he wants to go any further than he has.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's not old, but he's not young either. He's 33. I mean, to me, for him to get in position to win another title shot, I mean, he would have to be pretty much gifted a nice run of fighters from the UFC. I mean, he's lost 2 of his last 3 too. I mean, obviously the Sonnen fight was controversial. A lot of people had him winning the decision in that fight, but you look back through his career, anytime he's fought really a high level guy. You look at his losses: Vitor, Chael, Vanderlei, Dan Henderson, Rashad Evans. And
it's pretty much every top 10 fighter that he's ever fought. Yeah,
and his best win, you could make a decision. Yeah, Brian Stan, Dan Miller, Jason Miller.
It's probably Stan at this point.
Or
and
maybe
he did look. He did look in that fight. He beat the hell out of Brian Stan. Like, that wasn't a competitive fight.
You could even argue the Chris Lieben fight back in 2008 might have been his best win.
Yes, and Lieben testing positive for roids afterwards did help that.
Yeah. Anything else?
Was it painkillers for Lieben back in 08? I don't want to libel the man if I can avoid it.
No, I think it was steroids back. I can look it up for you. It was Stanzanol or Stanzanol.
Yeah, like the dumbest steroid in the world.
Yeah. Anything else from that card last weekend that you wanted to talk about before we move on to the show on Saturday?
It was the most. I tweeted this, and I got a few people to agree that it was I've never had a co-main event feel less like a co-main event in my entire UFC viewing career. Crowd was great. They loved Serafin, however the hell you pronounce it. And truth be told, CB Dollaway is not a shitty fighter. I hate his face, and I'd want nothing but bad things in life to happen to him. But he's not terrible at mixed martial arts.
No, like I said on Twitter on Saturday night, he does look like a Jonathan Taves with some sort of genetic deformation.
I don't know if we should be doing birth defect jokes, Mike. I don't know if that's where we should be.
I think it's appropriate, but yeah.
And I'm done with Ben Rothwell. I give up on Ben Rothwell.
Oh yeah. Especially losing to a guy like Gabriel Gonzaga, who knows where the hell he is in his career.
It was like the Fedor tap, and it was the look of a man right after he tapped of a man that knew he should not have tapped. Right? And Rothwell just said, "You know what? I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore." And he fucking looked around right after he tapped, like, "Wow, I'm not even kind of asleep."
Yeah.
Fuck. And also, Wagner Prado, not good at MMA. I don't know why everyone thought he was.
Great mustache, though.
Oh, hell of a fucking, Movember all the way, but just a bad fighter. And no, he just fought Phil Davis twice. No, he's not good.
Yeah. But yeah, we do have the UFC on Fox show in my hometown, Chicago, Illinois, on Saturday. I'm assuming you did not watch any of the press conference today, Derek, as you tend to not to do that.
I don't do press conferences. I am aware of the news that came out of the press conference, which in itself is news, because normally you don't get stories being broken at the pre-event things. But yeah, I didn't. It was
a gong show. It was almost as bad. There was that one Brazil press conference where it was just a fucking circus.
Press conferences, I don't think of a press conference. I think of Affliction and M1's conference call with the dog barking and Vadim disappearing like halfway through without telling anybody.
I believe that was a Strikeforce call. I think that was that was when they announced the Fedor signing.
Okay, so Strikeforce and M1 was the call there.
Yeah.
Affliction had some good ones too, but yeah, with the dog barking and Vadim disappearing, that will always be.
Yeah, I will always remember the female Russian translator going, "Vadim?
Yes.
Vadim? Vadim?" But the show headlined by Demetrius Johnson and John Dodson. There was an interesting question to Dana White, I guess probably in the post-fight or the post-press conference scrum, asking about the decision not to include the flyweight title in the promos for the Fox on the Fox promos during the NFL games. He said, apparently he said that he didn't think it was to hide the fact that they're flyweights or to disparage them in any way or whatever, which I thought was interesting because I feel like it's clear that they decided against using the word flyweight for a very specific reason.
Well, who is they specifically? Because you'll remember when they first signed the contract, Dana said, we've done all our in-house promotions and commercials and everything forever, and we're going to cede a lot of that to Fox.
No, I believe it was Fox. I think it's their decision.
Okay, well, I mean, and Fox might just say, world title fight instead of world flyweight title fight, maybe, and they might do the same thing for boxing. Maybe not. Like, who knows? I mean, I don't know who asked that question at the press conference, but there are 3 or 4 names that I could guess that it was, and it's just one of those, ask a question to start a fight kind of deals. Are you guys ashamed of the fact that these guys weigh 125 pounds? What the fuck kind of answer are you going to get to that question?
Well, I think it's I do think it's an interesting question, at least in terms of...
What's the answer? Like, what's the promoter going to be like, yeah, nobody wants to watch this shit, so we're calling it something else. What's he going to say? I mean,
yeah, you're not going to get a straight answer from Dana White, but, I think the thinking behind the question is interesting. I think
it's pretty clear that Fox and the UFC, they're going to do the promotion that they think is going to get the most people interested. And if you think that saying Quinton Rampage Jackson 3 times is better than saying flyweight, that's what you're going to do.
Right.
I mean, it's not like I don't think that there are any plans for them to abandon the division or admit that bringing in the 125ers, or for that matter, the 135 and the 145s was a mistake. I don't think they're going to cede that ground.
Right. How do you see that fight going, though?
Johnson versus Dodson?
Yes, sir.
I am a huge Demetrius Johnson fan. Watched him at WEC 53, I believe it was, in Broomfield when he was a 135er. Fought Nick Pace, who was widely expected to win, beat the hell out of him. Very, very solid fighter. I love his wrestling. And as much as I like Dodson, I think that his game plan, the power strikes that he throws, if he really plants his feet and stays in one spot for too long, then he's going to get taken down. And if he doesn't, then he's going to be bouncing around the outside of the cage while Johnson has the middle and boxes him. So my personal opinion would be that it was WEC 51 that I witnessed. I'm just making sure, and it was Nick Pace. But I'll have Johnson by decision. Dodson could knock him out, but I don't think that he'll win on the scorecards if it goes there, and I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, I like Johnson too. I almost want Johnson to win just because I find Dodson to be completely annoying both in and out of the cage.
Throw you off. Did you know that Demetrius Johnson's middle name is Krishna?
Krishna?
Krishna. Khrisna. As in Krishna, Hari.
That's very interesting.
I don't know what it means, but maybe it has something to do with the Microsoft sponsorship. Maybe there's some Illuminati shit going on. Let's get Ronda Rousey and Joe Rogan on the call.
We'll move on to the probably the most promoted fight on the card, as you sort of alluded to, Quinton Jackson and Glover Teixeira. The first thing I want to talk to you about before we get into the fight, and I sort of asked this on Twitter before we went on there, what's the odds that, win or lose, just in your opinion, what's the odds that we see Quinton Jackson fight in the UFC again after Saturday?
Well, I mean, you asked to set a line, and I kind of think as a bookie when I'm setting the line, what'll get the action on both sides. I think plus 200, that's basically a 1 out of 3 shot that he'll fight for the UFC again. But really, I'd set that exact same line that his next fight will be in the UFC, because I'm likening this to the Tito situation where you have a butthurt ex-champ, clearly not going to get the belt back anytime soon, pissed about not being on the throne anymore, not making the extras that you do when you're the belt holder. Nobody bitches about pay when they're the champion. It always comes afterwards. Tito raised a big stink. He got out of his contract shopped himself around, had some surgeries, talked some shit, and his next fight was in the UFC. He never took a fight with another organization throughout all that bullshit. Even when he was announcing cards for Affliction, he still never fought for anybody else. So Rampage talks about going to go box. I think that's a killer idea. He probably talks with Kimbo and they text about it all the time. But the difference is Kimbo doesn't have the potential anymore to make a couple $100,000 a fight in mixed martial arts. And Rampage does. And Rampage will probably quickly learn why failed strikers in boxing and kickboxing go to MMA and not the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing with Quentin is that he feels like he has options outside of MMA. Honestly, kickboxing I would say is probably a better option for him than straight boxing.
But he sucks at kicking and kick defense.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big problem.
No, yeah, I agree. So it's hard for me to imagine him having a career in either of those. I could see it being more of like a one-off show in Japan where he kickboxes or something like that. I just have a hard time seeing him fighting in another UFC or another MMA organization at this point. I mean, really, Bellator is the only option for him in terms of any sort of exposure in the U.S. If something takes off in Japan, obviously that's going to be an option for him, but the market out there isn't exactly thriving or booming. So, it's just hard for me to see what he's going to be able to do in terms of fight sport. And, it seems like his Hollywood career is surprisingly fizzled out.
Is it a career if you have like one movie and a cameo in a Wes Craven miniseries?
Yeah, I don't know. Is there talk about an A-Team sequel?
Not that I've heard. I think that Liam Neeson probably has better shit to do with his time.
Yeah.
If he goes to kickboxing, I hope that they just throw him right up the ladder because I'd just like to see a Daniel Guida or a fucking Gokhan Saki just absolutely destroy him, and then he can bitch about people throwing punches all the time instead of trying to take him down.
Now, and to kind of follow up that question, do you think it's more likely he ends up fighting back in the UFC with a win or with a loss?
I think that he'd be welcome back either way. If he decides he wants to stay with the UFC, they'll take him. But if he wants to go, then I don't think that it'll be like Dan Henderson. They'll say, here's the offer, take it or leave it. And if you leave it, it's not going to work out that well for you because it didn't really work out that well for Dan either.
I mean, Strikeforce paid him a pretty penny, didn't he?
He made decent money, yes, and his sponsors were allowed there, but he still made less in sponsorship than he would have. And let's not forget that he lost his first fight in Strikeforce to Jake Shields in one of the shittiest fights of all time. Got sat on for 4 rounds.
True.
I think that was, and it was a very bad trade for Strikeforce because then they let Shields go, and they told Shields, much like the UFC, the UFC made Dan Henderson an offer. He said, "I got a better one elsewhere." Strikeforce said publicly after the Shields Henderson fight, "We're not even going to make Jake Shields an offer. You can have him." Fucking over Jake Shields because there was no competition for his salary. Strikeforce was not all good for the fighters.
So how do you see this fight going? Watching.
Quit bringing me back on topic, goddammit. Go with me on the tangents. Where's Roth?
I watched the press conference today, and Quentin. Obviously, I'm just guessing based on what I saw with a sweatshirt on, but he looked good. He looked in shape. He looked like he was ready to fight. But should we expect that motivated Quentin Jackson, or are we going to expect to see the guy that we saw fight Ryan Bader in Japan?
If he's not motivated for this, then not only is he stupid, which I think, very, very possible, but he also doesn't give a shit about money, and I don't think that's the case. This is like, how guys have contract years in other sports. This is a contract fight. So if he can go out there and knock off Glover Teixeira, maybe that gets the UFC to budge on their bargaining a little bit. Maybe that gets Bellator to throw some retarded amount of money at him to get sat on by King Mo. But if he's not motivated and in shape for this fight, then he'll never be for another fight in his life because this is the one that's going to dictate how much he gets paid for the rest of his career. Yellow.
I just want to see how long it would take for you to say something.
God damn it, Mikey. Don't fucking screw with me right now because that could have gone on for like a solid minute or two while I played with my mute button. You know what I'm doing over here, and you're just being a dick.
The interesting thing is Quentin comes into this fight at 34, and people still talk about Glover Teixeira like he's a prospect, but Glover Teixeira is also 33, so there's really not much of an age difference there. Quentin has a lot more wear and tear. He's got
absolutely. He's had more wars and less cans, and he was also fighting in Japan for a while. So there.
He has almost double the fights, or I think exactly double the fights as Glover had.
And tougher opponents.
Yeah, and that's one of the things for me. You look at Glover's record.
Rodriguez, baby.
Yeah, Fabio Maldonado, Kyle Kingsbury, Rico Rodriguez, Marvin Eastman, Antonio Mendez. It's obvious that Glover is a quality fighter. But
wait a minute, let me verify this very quickly. I need to do this very quickly. He beat the man that beat Junior Dos Santos. Joaquim Ferreira.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also has a win over Sokuju back in 2006.
And if you didn't know, the win by Ferreira over Junior Dos Santos was in a rematch. He lost the first fight to Dos Santos and beat him in a rematch.
Yeah. But we still don't know exactly how good he is, or what sort of competition level he can beat. Quentin, for all of his faults at this point, is still probably a top 10 or a fringe top 10 guy, and is clearly the best fighter that Glover's ever fought.
I don't know about that. If Ryan Bader kicks your ass, you're probably not a top 10 fighter.
Well, that's why I'm saying, fringe top 10. If you look at the 205 rankings, I mean, I'm sure you could put him between 10 and 15 somewhere. I'm sure you could find a spot for him.
If you wanted to, yeah. But then again, you could probably you got Phil Davis is better than Quentin Rampage Jackson is today, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
I'm actually going to look up where the bloody elbow rankings have him at.
Thank you for noting the source there. We gotta be nice to whoever it is, whatever.
These are the Meta rankings. They have Quentin at number 9.
That's retarded. Who's 10?
Little Nogueira, followed by
Little. Go ahead.
Well, all right. Well, here's 8 through 15. Bader, Quentin, Little Nogueira, Glover Teixeira, Forrest Griffin, Musashi, Molal, and Rafael Cavalcante.
You absolutely shouldn't even have Rampage over Forrest, because Forrest beat Rampage, and they've had roughly the same career since. What's Rampage's last win? Was it the Machida bullshit decision?
It was
he should have lost.
It was Matt Hamill, my friend.
Ah, Matt Hamill, yes, a stellar opponent that he could not finish. Dog shit fight.
I mean, for me, this fight says a lot about Glover, whether he can beat Quentin or not. I still have my reservations about him. He's obviously a quality.
You've been down Glover since the beginning, and I think it's the glowing reviews that he's got. What do you see wrong in his game?
It's just a matter of fighting a different level of competition. It's not that I have anything against him as a fighter or his skill set.
I think his power translates across opponents. I think his aggression translates across opponents, and I think that his ground game, is solid.
Well, my thing with a guy like Teixeira is he came in his first fight. He beat Kyle Kingsbury. Destroyed Kyle Kingsbury. And then people were already calling for him to fight John Jones.
Yes. Well, people have been looking for an anti-John Jones for a while. And I'm telling you, there are real fighters. There are people out there who know striking and know jiu-jitsu to a level that we don't. That look at Glover Teixeira and say, if anybody in the division is going to beat John Jones, it's going to be him. And a lot of that is because of his aggression and his lack of fear, because everybody who's fought John Jones so far has been pissed scared of him.
He's going to get crushed by John Jones if he fights him.
That he's going to get inside of John Jones. He is going to get chest to chest with him, and then he's going to throw some hands.
And then John Jones is going to throw him on his head.
That's probably what's going to happen, but he's going to be pressured in a way that he hasn't been before. Machida is like the sniper of the division. He got a couple shots off on Jones. Teixeira is going to be that David Tua, that get inside and bob and weave and just throw hooks like a motherfucker and know you're going to hit something along the way.
Well, my point would being, a lot of the reason why I've been down on him is just sort of as a counterbalance to the hype that he's gotten over beating Kyle Kingsbury and Fabio Maldonado.
Right. Just because you're not going to beat John Jones doesn't mean you're not good.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's people are rushing to put into a fight that he should not be pushed into.
People do that because they hate the champion. So they did it when Tim Sylvia was the champ. They were like, oh my God, Andrei Arlovsky is fucking best heavyweight in the world. So much faster and more dynamic. And then he beat Tim Sylvia, and that was confirmed. Then he got his ass kicked by Tim Sylvia, and he disappeared to the wayside. And then, they picked up Randy as their new torch. It's all about the hatred of the guy with the belt that leads people to make those leaps that you see that I think you're seeing with Teixeira a little bit. But then again, like I said, real people that are involved in the sport, professional fighters, look at him and say, he's got the talent and the game plan and the skill set to pressure Jones and make him uncomfortable and not let him just stand and wing shots. I wanted to real quick ask you about this since I'm, talking a lot. Rampage Jackson was talking shit on John Jones, how he thought the kick to the knee on Vitor Belfort should be illegal, or at least it was cheap bullshit, and he didn't think that spinning elbows should be allowed because they hit you in the back of the head. Basically just saying that every strike John Jones throws should be illegal. What do you think?
I mean, I'm all for. I've always been all for more techniques being allowed. I understand the argument of that spinning back elbow hits the back of the head a lot of the times, but to me, when you're face to face with a fighter and a blow just sort of lands in the back of the head just through movement, not of any intention, it's hard for me to say that strike should be illegal. And then the kick to the knee, I mean, I've always never understood why people want to make that illegal. I mean,
because it's dirty. Like, you could put somebody out for a year if you land that right. You'll buckle their knee. We've
seen it over the past couple of years with Anderson and John Jones. And,
Anderson pretty much. I think those are really the only two, though. Anderson started doing it, I believe, in the Lietis fight, and then a lot more in the Maia fight.
Yeah.
He didn't do it in the Cote fight. I think it was more like a react, like, fuck you, like, this is legal and I'm going to do it. And, that as a sports fan of other sports, if they don't say you can't do it, you can do it.
Right.
It's just like playing a video game against a friend. Like, if they let you do it, it ain't cheating.
I agree. I'm assuming we're both taking Teixeira in this fight in terms of picks.
Well, you, with a mealy-mouthed pussy demeanor, yes, I'm pretty confident in it.
It's not that I'm not confident. I'll be rooting for Quentin.
Why?
I still like the guy. I mean, I don't
really with the driving into the pregnant lady and the secret fucking pimping.
I still like him as a fighter. It's like John Jones. I don't care for him as a person, but I enjoy watching John Jones fight, and I want to see him beat people up.
I enjoy watching like Quentin Rampage fights from 2007 and before.
He has not been that bad.
He has not been that good.
The Bader fight wasn't good, but everything else was. I mean,
the Hamill fight sucked. That was an awful, awful shit-tastic fight, and he lost the Machida fight. God damn it! It's a wonder he didn't get stopped in the third.
I agree that he lost that fight.
Laid there like a pile of shit and somehow got a 29-28 decision on two judges' scorecards. You saw the look on his face when they announced that. He's like, what the fuck?
Well, and he would have won that fight if it was a 5-round fight like it should have been.
Yes, and that that was one of the things I think that made them say, okay, enough of this 3-round main event bullshit.
Yeah.
Almost lost to Jardine, too. Let's not forget that fight. Jardine had that fight won until about 10 seconds left when he got dropped.
I don't agree with that, but
he was winning on the scorecards. He was winning the third until he got dropped with 10 seconds left, and it was 1-1 going into the third. Jardine would have won that fight, and they verified it on the judges' scorecards that if he would have won the third, he would have won the fight.
Well, that's neither here nor there. In the third fight on the card, your boy Donald Cerrone going up against Anthony Pettis.
Oh my God, really? That fight's finally gonna fucking happen?
Are you already jerking off just thinking about it?
I'm just sad because this was the fight that everybody wanted like this time last year. It was after the Diaz fight, or actually going into the Diaz fight, so more than a year ago. People wanted to see Cerrone versus Pettis, and then they had the shit talking last summer, and Pettis has his shoulder, and Donald comes out and looks great against Gallard, and that was, 6 months ago now? 5 months ago? It's just, this fight has lost so much heat, and it's really disappointing to me, because I think it's going to be awesome, and I think it's going to be a showcase for my boy.
And why do you think that?
Because he's bigger, and he's a better striker, and he's better at jiu-jitsu.
There's no flaws in your boy, is there?
No, he's not a great wrestler. He's gotten a lot better at his wrestling since Jamie Varner sat on him in their first fight, but it's still not his strong suit.
Yeah, it's true.
But he is but I love his leg kicks. He at 6 foot and cutting down to 155. He's an imposing figure at 155 pounds. Pettis could probably make 145 if he wanted to, but Cerrone would have to cut off his foot in order to do that. What do you think? Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, I'm going to tell you that the betting odds have Pettis as the slight favorite.
Well, that's stupid.
It's a slight favorite. It's not.
Well, like minus 120.
Minus 125. There's one side that has him as a pick'em, but
it's basically 50-50. That's just them. Like, all right, we're 52-48 as far as the betting lines. Let's try to get it to 50-50. That's.
No, I like Donald too. I think.
What's the last time Pettis fought? Was it Lausanne?
It was Joe Lausanne in February.
Years ago.
It was 11 months ago to the day.
If he's got an ounce of ring rust, then Cerrone's just going to kick right through his shins.
So we're both going to go Cerrone kicking through the shins?
I actually like Cerrone by TKO at some point. Although he is known to dive on submissions. If you'll notice, if you rewatch 150, right after he lands the head kick on Melvin and then that right hand and Melvin goes down, he doesn't go down to punch him. He goes down to choke him. He dives right on the rear naked because Melvin lands on his stomach. And that's just his instinct. So I could totally see a submission win too.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Cerrone by decision. One thing about the Chicago show that I was talking about with Erica, our producer, before the show, it doesn't really have the sort of big draw at the top of the card. Rampage is probably a bigger draw than anything else in the card, and I think that says a lot about the card itself. But it has gotten a lot of promotion from Fox during the NFL games this year, during the playoffs. So what are you expecting in terms of viewership numbers, Derek?
Well, we've got the NFL playoffs, and there's a championship fight, which has the cachet, and they're hiding the fact that it's little people, although they do show them on the screen being way shorter than the octagon, so I think the fucking cat's out of the bag in that one, journalist. I would say, the first one came in at, $7 million at the peak for the main event?
I thought it was $9 million to peak, but I could be wrong.
Well, I hope you're right. I fucking hope you're right. Far be it for me to overestimate the UFC numbers and play into the stereotypes about me. But this one, I think, will do between the first one and the Diaz card, which was their second best now. I think that was at like $5 million. So probably, I think this will be their second best one. I think this will be their best one since Dos Santos and Velasquez.
Yeah, Dos Santos and Velasquez peaked at 8.8 million.
Okay, I don't think this will do that, but I think it'll be above second place right now, which I think is in the 5-somethings.
You think it'll do better than the Fox 5 show?
I do. Because it's coming during the playoffs, it's got a championship fight on it, and it's got Cerrone, who does have a fan base that's rapidly extending to things like wakeboarding and BMX and rock climbing and shit like that. He's getting more people into the sport with this extreme stuff that he does.
See, I think it'll do a little worse than the. I thought the Fox 5 show was a stronger draw. I think MMA fans were more excited, and hardcore fans tell their casual fans that this is going to be a great card. I think this is a good card. I think it's a quality card top to bottom, but I don't think it's a great card. One of the things that they were talking about on the Fox 5 show for a long time was leading up to it was that it was one of the best cards on paper for 2012, and I don't think you can say that about this show. And with a main event that just doesn't really have that draw that people want to see, I see this. If the Fox 5 show averaged 4.4 million, I see this doing more about 3.94 million. It's tough for me to say. It's very hard for me to see this show doing better than that one.
Well, fuck you. I hope you're wrong. And eat shit.
All right. At the press conference earlier this afternoon, Matt Hughes officially announced his retirement. Before we get into his new role in the UFC, just kind of sum up your thoughts on Matt Hughes' career as a whole.
The best welterweight of all time until George St. Pierre came along. I think George St. Pierre finally surpassed him with that last title defense. Before I give historical relevancy to, title reigns, ranking of your opponents when you beat them, how long you were there, how dominant you were viewed. That fight against Hoist was kind of a joke, but it was still awesome in the sense that they actually fucking did it, and it's they did. That's crazy. I still have Fedor as the best heavyweight of all time, even though I wouldn't pick him to beat the current champ. But I felt the same way about Hughes for years and years into George St. Pierre's title reign because of how long he did it for, the people he did it against. He avenged the loss against BJ, and then by the time that he lost the third one, both of them were so far over the hill that it almost kind of didn't really matter. His ability to come back from that, the Trig fight, great highlights, the Newton slam, just a hell of a fighter. I don't think about how stupid he is outside of the cage. I don't think about the 5,000 pounds of meat that he killed in Africa with his son. I don't think about the pounding his brother behind the barn, as Goldberg said. I don't fucking think about the telling Tim Sylvia, yeah, I just don't like you. And that's just the way it's going to be. I try not to think about that. I watch the highlights. Because if you do that with all the pro athletes in the world, or any of them really, you're not going to like them. So just don't do that. Focus on their work. You can do it with a painter who is also like a weird-ass sexual deviant. You just like his paintings, and that's fine. That's the way I feel about Matt Hughes. I just like his paintings.
I think you did a pretty good summary of it. I thought, St. Pierre probably passed him a couple of fights ago in terms of the best welterweight alive or of all time. But, I think a lot of for Matt, I think the big thing for him was avenging that BJ loss and then beating George in that first title fight that they had. I think that was, obviously that set up a great trilogy between the two of them.
And great highlights of like the banter when when George St. Pierre is like, hey, can you show me anything? And they were joking around the cafeteria. He's like, hey, show you the armbar defense.
Yeah, exactly.
And Matt Hughes was like a world-class dick in that respect too. Just a guy who could just smile a shit-eating grin right after saying some fucking good shit talker.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff about Matt Hughes that I think is kind of weird and maybe repulsive, but he is a real great asshole.
World class.
World class.
Made Tim Sylvia pretty much cry. And to the point that Tim Sylvia felt the need to tell people about how mean Matt Hughes was to him.
But the other,
I just wanted to be his friend and hang out with him, and Matt said, "Yeah, that's just not going to happen."
Yeah. The other announcement was that the UFC would be putting Matt into the role of Vice President of Athlete Development and Government Relations. There wasn't really any specifics about what that meant. There was talk. There was talk about a code of conduct, though. And this coming on the heels of
make everyone wear crosses around their necks. This could be fun.
Yeah.
We're going to have a prayer meeting, and if you don't come, you're cut.
This came on the heels of the Ronda Rousey, Sandy Hook conspiracy video controversy.
Which had a really insanely stupid response to.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second. But not knowing anything about it right now, do you think that the code of conduct is a legitimate attempt for them to sort of come up with a list of rules and regulations for their fighters, or is it more of lip service to kind of shut the media up?
It's dumb and stupid unless it's in the contract. Unless you have it with the athlete in their fighter contract that they sign with you when they sign on for however many fights, the exclusivity, the champions clause. There has to be a code of conduct that can be enforced monetarily or with suspensions. Otherwise, it's simply an excuse for them to do what they already have the freedom to do, which is to cut you. But short of that, they have no ability to fine Ronda Rousey $1,000 or to, make her apologize and record a video or, give some money to a Sandy Hook, the parents, something like that. There's no enforcement mechanism. And absent that, you're right, it is completely lip service just to shut the media up. And the thing is that they'll buy it. And they'll just have another excuse to bitch at Dana, and they'll write the rules in a way where you can say, well, maybe it was this or maybe it was that. We're just going to kind of let it be. We can't do anything about it anyway, but she knows better. We talk to her. It's going to be okay. It's all going to be bullshit until these fighters can actually feel the heat. Like when Kobe, gets caught on the court saying the word faggot and he gets fined $100,000. He hasn't said it since, has he?
Well, that we know of.
No, yeah, but HD cameras, you can't say anything on a basketball court anymore without somebody being able to lip read it, especially if you're yelling it out.
Right.
They caught Tom Brady with the classic "fuck you" on the sideline earlier this year. Great Todd Haley gifs of him just reaming people out.
Well, and the other issue with this is, as you said, the previous sort of punishment was whether they were going to cut you or not, and a lot of that depended on how valuable you were to the company. Forrest Griffin and Miguel Torres pretty much made the same faux pas on Twitter. Forrest still with the company. Miguel was cut, brought back, and then cut again. Rashad Evans made an extremely inappropriate comment about the Penn State scandal during the lead up to the last Chicago UFC show. It had no repercussions. So
what exactly did he say? I'm trying to remember his quote. I know he was talking shit to Phil Davis, but what did he say? Was he just like, ha, you fuck kids? Or
no, it was something about touching and bringing up the scandal. It was something kind of bringing those two together.
Hey, if it's roundabout, then that's Muhammad Ali. As long as you're not just like, hey, what's up, pedophile? But you've got to be clever about it.
But this code of conduct, like you said, unless they can sort of fine and sort of bring up some sort of punitive damage that doesn't just result in your leaving the UFC, it really means nothing. Because they're not, are they going to punish someone like Ronda Rousey when, they can punish a guy like, if Matt Brown did what Ronda Rousey did, they might just cut him.
Okay, well, according to our producer, Erica, who I assume is just in love with Rashad Evans, he said something along the lines of, I'm going to put my hands on you like the man did them kids. And that is inappropriate, Rashad.
Right. But even now, what if Rashad said that today, what would Matt Hughes in his new role have the authority to do?
Nothing. Just talk a little shit and say it's unacceptable. You got to stop. And then, if the company does that, if the UFC just goes out in public and says what he said is unacceptable, he's going to apologize. You're going to see very few fighters buck and say, to hell with that, I stand by what I said. Because then they're going to lose sponsors, and that has nothing to do with the UFC because they can't make them sponsor a guy who's saying that kind of shit. It'll be like a John Rocker situation where even if he's good, the club distances themselves from him even if they keep him on the roster, and then everybody else just turns on him because of what he's maintaining and not just saying, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. If you do that, they'll pretty much let it slide. But like I said, that's pretty much all they have is the court of public opinion, absent an enforcement mechanism, which the fighters would have to sign on to en masse because you can't have some guys with it and some guys without it. It's not going to happen, and it's not going to matter.
Nolan Howe on Twitter tweeting at me that the quote was, I'm going to touch or lay hands on you harder than that dude at Penn State, bro.
Phil Davis should spit at him.
But speaking of Ronda and the Dana thing, Dana responded to a question about it, and I'll just read the quote. This is Dana.
The stupid long quote. God damn you, Dana.
Yeah, this is Dana on what Ronda Rousey tweeted in regards to the Sandy Hook conspiracy video. My opinion is she has an opinion. You know what I mean? Everyone has an opinion. She didn't come out and say the thing was a fucking hoax. She tweeted something that said, look at this story. People are fucking pussies is the problem. That's the big problem. Every human being is going to have an opinion. She didn't write a story saying that Sandy Hook thing was a hoax. She tweeted some video out there that has 20 million views. Do you see me retweeting something like that? No. but there's a bunch of people that buy into that shit and do that stuff. And as a human being, she can have an opinion. She didn't even give her opinion. She just tweeted it. People need to calm down. If that's the thing you're most concerned in your life, you need to get a life.
Well, I do need to get a life. We started this show that we've been doing for a year with me talking about the computer I just built. So yeah, a life would be nice. But that doesn't change the fact that what you tweeted was stupid. And just because 20 million people in this country are fucking morons doesn't mean it's okay that one of your fighters tweeted this. She apologized. Why did she apologize and he's going to bat for her?
Oh yeah, and
you know what that means? That means that she apologized for the sponsors, not for the company.
Well, and it seems too, why did Dana decide to say this instead of just saying she apologized and that's it and leave it at that?
I don't know. Probably because it's an excuse to take a shot at bloggers. It probably came as like the 9th question in one of those press scrums where they do the little huddle and he's standing there for half an hour just batting people back left and right. I don't know. It was a stupid response. I hope he doesn't actually feel that way because it's a really disgusting thing to fucking put out there and propagate. There were a lot of people saying, what she did was worse than what Miguel Torres did. And I think there's an argument for that.
Yeah, and I've never really understood people always love to fall back on I can have an opinion or everyone has their own opinion, but there are things called facts, and sometimes your opinion doesn't mesh with the facts. If Ronda had done the funniest thing about that whole situation is that Ronda was saying don't believe everything that you see. But if she had done any sort of her own independent research, she would have realized that believing what she saw on some shitty YouTube video was
with misspelled words, with
misspelled words right up top.
And your mother, I wonder what her mom thinks about this. That's an interview I would like to do. Like, did you watch the video? What do you think about the Sandy Hook conspiracy theory? Because her mother is a smart woman.
Yeah,
and I bet that she would probably say it's fucking ridiculous and it's insulting and it should not be given the light of day by reasonable people.
Yeah. And I just saw a retweeted MMA Junkie thing about Ben Folks talking about the Ronda Rousey Sandy Hook thing, which I will read on my own time.
That's right, you will.
A couple more stories before we get out of here. Speed and Fuel will be rebranded as Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2.
Is this official?
I believe it is official, and if not, it's basically official.
Well, I was reading an interesting thing yesterday. There was this whole big story yesterday about something called the X Surface tablet that's supposed to be paired with the new Xbox that's coming out from Microsoft, and all these blog posts had this list of specs and what it could do and how big it would be, and then it comes out later in the day that this guy just said, yeah, I just made all of it up. I said I worked at Microsoft. I told one blog these specs that I copied from some other places, and they ran with it, and then like 50 people blogged about it. So I'm waiting, because Fox... They're not going to do it under the table. They'll roll it out and say, here's what we're doing. This is our investment. This is our plan. And when they do, I'll be interested. Until then, we'll see.
Well, I believe the Sports Business Journal was the first to report it, and I believe that they were one of the first to report the UFC on Fox deal a couple years ago.
Couple years ago. Jesus Christ, how time flies.
Yeah, and... it's also been something that's been heavily rumored for a while that this is what they were going to do. The big question for me is whether, to me, if they decide to split the UFC shows into Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2, rather than just keeping them on one or the other, because what it sounds like is that Fox Sports 1 is going to be sort of the flagship with all of their major properties, and then Fox Sports 2 is going to be not exactly sure what's going to be put on there. If it's going to be, sort of extreme sports or replays or straight just news shows and talk shows. But to me, if this is a great thing for the UFC, if they put it on one network, and preferably the premier network, which I assume will be Fox Sports 1, and sort of kind of put all the programming on that channel instead of splitting up the programming between networks.
I think that they will still split it between networks because I think the UFC has a ton of fighters and that they'll be happy to put on shows for each network. They'll have more than enough for both, is what I'm saying. But their premier content will probably go on the flagship. Their real premier content, the NFL and big Major League Baseball games, those will still be on Fox. So I don't think that part of the deal changes if that's what they do. Are they getting rid of Fox Sports Net, the regional networks? Do those still exist?
I am not sure.
Because Fox Sports Rocky Mountain used to have like 40 Avalanche games a year, like half the Rockies games. They had solid contracts with a lot of the teams around here.
I would imagine that the regional networks stay in place.
Yeah, I mean ESPN can't air everything, so
right. The other issue too is whether the Ultimate Fighter will stay on FX, if it'll be considered entertainment programming, or if they'll move that to one of the Fox Sports networks. I would imagine if this current season, which we won't talk about because neither of us watched the show, but if this current season continues to do well, I imagine FX will want to keep it around.
I think that that's a solid thing to do because it does have more of a reality TV show aspect. It's a different audience than one that watches Fox Sports and will watch for those purposes. Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. Having the reality show on the same network as the fights has its advantages, but having it on a network that, if not has wider viewership, then vastly different viewership has its advantages as well.
Yeah, it'll be also interesting. One of the concerns for me is I don't get fuel. Comcast in Chicago does not offer fuel, and the Speed Channel is only offered on Comcast on the highest premium package. So for me, if this, first of all, if this gets Comcast to take on both Fox Sports 1 and 2, that would be great. But if it moves all of their programming onto one, and I can get one. That would also be great for me, just personally speaking, which is what I'm sort of rooting for. What's your situation with fuel right now, Derek? Do you get fuel?
Yes. I don't get it in HD. I don't know if anyone does.
I feel like someone has to get that in HD.
I don't think fuel comes in HD. It doesn't with Comcast, to my understanding. Maybe DirecTV, maybe in another country. Here, I will tweet that, actually. And via the Twitter, Ronda Rousey's mom did comment on Bloody Elbow, incidentally, about Ronda's tweet. And I will go ahead and read that to you in its entirety. Except for the part where she responds to somebody starting after that. She retweeted something without giving it any thought. She is away training for the fight now and has been very focused on training and had a lot of media demands. When she thought a minute how she could have caused more pain to people who had lost their children, she felt horrible. She has a niece, her goddaughter, who is that age, and could not imagine how painful it could be. When she thought about it later, she took it down, end quote. And that's pretty much exactly what I expected her to say. That's perfect. And yeah, that's almost puts it to bed for me. I still dislike Ronda Rousey for all the reasons I did before, but probably willing to let this go at this point.
That she's a woman?
No, that she's very, very annoying and thinks she's much more intelligent than she is and weighs in on things that, I don't care about her opinion on, i.e. the Kardashians and George St. Pierre's fighting style.
The last thing I want to talk about with you before we get out of here, Rick Hahn was, fought Michael Chandler, lost to Michael Chandler last Thursday on Bellator's debut on Spike. Big story coming out of that was Hahn alluded to a sponsor not paying him after the fight because of his performance. It ended up being the, quote, lifestyle brand, unquote, HTFU. After Hahn went public with it and it was outed, they were outed, and the pressure, they ended up paying him. Of course, the amount was $1,500, so it's not exactly life-changing money for either party.
Here's the deal. I'm so glad you brought this up, Mike, because this brings us back to one of my very first disagreements with you, and I've been right about it for like 3 years. Do you remember this?
I don't, because I don't know what you're talking about.
This would be early 2009 or late or mid 2009 when the UFC introduced the sponsorship minimum and said you have to commit at least, I believe it's $100,000 or for a certain amount of months or else you don't get to be on UFC shorts. You wrote that it would cost fighters money, they wouldn't be able to get sponsors that couldn't meet the minimum, we'd see empty spots on fighter shorts, there'd be, people would lose money. And I said, no, you're stupid. Those spots will be filled by better companies. It's moving on up. And if they had this in Bellator, where you had to make a minimum commitment, you had to make some kind of a deposit, you had to pay the organization something in order to get access to their fighters, then this would not have happened to Rick Hunt. And if he was in the UFC, it wouldn't have happened to him there.
Well, my counter argument to that, Derek, is that if you watched the UFC show last weekend, the Brazil show, there were many fighters who had plenty of space in their shorts that weren't being taken up by sponsors.
Okay, so do you believe that they would have made more money had that sponsorship minimum been lifted in that event?
Perhaps. Perhaps
they would have been screwed like Rick Hahn was,
Well, I'm obviously not going to argue for sponsors screwing fighters over.
But it's the ability to do so that is allowed by letting them come in and say, hey, you come shop at our store, can you give me a few square inches on your short for $700? And then the UFC moved to ban places like Condom Depot and, other sponsors that were kind of lowbrow, and people thought that was going to cost the fighters money, but it hasn't yet.
How do you know that, though?
How do you know that? That's a hell of an argument, Mike. You should.
I'm just saying. How do you know that it hasn't cost fighters money?
Because on the vast majority of UFC shows, you can bring up the Brazil show. I'm going to have to rewatch it now in order to see that. But it being a Brazil show with a bunch of guys from the reality show, I'd like to talk to their managers and see what the hell was wrong with getting those guys some sponsors, because it shouldn't have been an issue, especially in fucking Brazil. The overarching point is that on every other UFC card that you've seen in the last 4 years since they integrated this policy, no empty spots. Guys making more money. Sponsors having to commit longer term to the UFC. And they haven't lost any sponsors worth a damn that I've seen.
Well, you know what we should do, Derek? We should find someone in the sponsor industry and bring him on the show, have a little chat with him.
And they will be insanely objective about what fighters and the UFC should do.
Maybe they will.
That's what I'm saying. Wouldn't a qualified manager doing his job have helped Han more than a sponsored tax? That is to both of us from @HeyNotTheFace, who is one of my favorite antagonists. I feel like, every other sport is going to have rules as far as sponsorship goes, and they're going to require a minimum commitment. They're going to require some money, too, to have access to the athletes that they've promoted. And that's fair. And it hasn't, and to my knowledge, it hasn't cost anybody any money. And by making the real estate on the shorts more expensive, the only logical conclusion is that those fighters are making more money than they were before off of sponsorships.
Erica, if you could hit the music for us. Derek, have you been following hockey at all this week?
No, I have. I knew that Jaromir Jagr and Teemu Solani were kicking ass, so it's cool to know that it's 1995 again.
Well, Teemu Solani and Jaromir Jagr have been kicking ass since 1990.
Yeah, but Teemu Solani had a number of years where he was just broken in half, and it's very interesting how he's resurgent.
No, it's great that there's a season, though, because this is going to be Teemu Solani's last year, and if there was no season, they would have retired, so...
Let's see what the Avalanche can do. We're super young, and they're playing 1 million games in 3 days, so hopefully we can just outrun some people towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and this Blackhawks team's been great so far. We'll see you guys all next week.